Hi, this is Joyce Bullisan. You're listening to TV Confidential.
I was so convinced I was doing the right thing back then.
What matters is what you do now.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential radio talk show about television. Is happy to welcome two-time Emmy-nominated actress Lee Purcell. Lee's film career began in 1969 when she was personally selected and mentored by screen legend Steve McQueen to star opposite Michael Douglas in the acclaimed feature film Adam at 6 a.m. That led Lee to a career in film and television that has seen her work with some of the most iconic stars of the 20th century, including Charles Bronson, Gary Busey, Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor, Warren Oates, Nicolas Cage, Cloris Leachman, Andy Griffith, Kirk Douglas, Jan Michael Vincent, Bill Bixby, Mark Harmon, Beau Bridges, and James Garner. Lee Purcell recently completed production of the upcoming feature film Carol of the Bells. Carol of the Bells is scheduled to open the Bentonville Film Festival in May 2019. She has a few other projects in the works, which we'll ask her about in just a second. But first, Lee Purcell, welcome to TV Confidential.
Oh, Ed, it's my great pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
What can you tell us about Carol of the Bells?
Well, it's a groundbreaking film. It's very exciting, and it was a great honor to work with all those people that are in it. It's about a woman who is now a grown woman, and she has Down syndrome, and she lives in a care facility. But many years ago, she had a baby with another disabled person, and they were madly in love, but the baby was taken away because it was thought that they or she could not raise it. So then, many years pass, and the man, the grown man now, he's searching for his birth mother, and when he finds out that she has Down syndrome, it's a real problem for him. But it isn't a problem for his wife, who is pregnant. So it's a very sweet and wonderful story. The woman who plays the title role, Carol of the Bells, is played by an actual actress who has Down syndrome, who is just wonderful. And I play her best friend, her confidant, her companion, her caregiver. I run the care facility, and I've basically taken care of her most of her life. And things unfold from there. The director, Joey Travolta, he has a film company called Inclusion Film, and also a film school, several film schools. And their specialty is to help people who have various forms of disabilities, whether developmental or physical, and to help them learn the skills it takes to work in film on a film crew. And he's been doing this since 2007, and he has 5 film schools across California, and then he teaches 2-week seminars across the country. And 70% of the crew on our film, Carol of the Bells, were developmentally disabled. And it was a fantastic experience. I get choked up even thinking about it, because it was really enlightening and inspiring, and I learned so much from doing this film. And it's very important that people understand that people with disabilities, they're just like you and me, except for their disabilities are more obvious, because we all have a form of a disability, whatever it is. But these people's are more obvious, and what Joey has done is given them an entree into having an actual career and to being financially independent. I gotta tell you, Ed, it was one of the best experiences of my life.
Carol of the Bells opens the Bentonville Film Festival in May 2019. Lee Purcell is the star of Carol of the Bells, along with Donna Mills, Donna Pescow, Geri Jewell, and Andrea F. Freeman. Andrea F. Freeman plays the title role in Carol of the Bells, and as Lee mentioned, Andrea is an actress who happens to have Down syndrome. For more information, BentonvilleFilmFestival.com. You can follow Lee on Twitter and on Instagram. Were you aware of Joey's company, Inclusion Films?
Inclusion.
Inclusion.
No, I was not. I had actually talked to Joey about 20 years ago about an entirely different film. So this came out of the blue. And also, we must also mention two of the other stars of the films are R.J. Mitte. He plays the young man in search of his birth mother, and the whole story pivots around him. And he played Bryan Cranston's son on Breaking Bad for all those years, and he's a fantastic actor. And he has a new series, the name of which, of course, I forget. And then Yuli Morales plays his wife, and she is from American Horror Story. So it is quite a fantastic cast. And also, the Bentonville Film Festival, for those people who are not aware of it, it's in Bentonville, Arkansas, and it was co-founded by Gina Davis and Trevor Drinkwater. And this particular festival, which has been around 4 or 5 years, has become a very, very important festival in that it specializes and focuses on underrepresented groups, such as people with disabilities, such as LGBTQ people, such as women, such as people of color. So people who might not get an opportunity in other festivals have a huge opportunity in this festival. So we're very excited to have our film in this festival. It may be opening the festival. We don't really know yet. We're told that it may open, it may be the gala film, but we don't know yet. But it's a Christmas movie, so it is opening Christmas 2019. But it's debuting at the Bentonville Festival in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is the home of Walmart. So the festival is extremely well funded.
Yes, the dates for this year's Bentonville Film Festival are May 7th to May 11th, 2019. BentonvilleFilmFestival.com for more information. And as Lee mentioned, the film will be released on a more wide basis towards the holiday season this year. And just thinking aloud, I mean, Carol of the Bells is just one example of just how far we've come in the last 25, 30 years to not only have a performer with Down syndrome as the lead, but it's also not uncommon anymore.
Well, I think it is uncommon, but it is now becoming at least accepted. Also remember that we had 70% of our crew was people with disabilities. And then also RJ, and he doesn't mind my saying this because it's widely known, he has cerebral palsy. He has a very light version. I call it cerebral palsy light. I don't know I have to ask him if that's okay to say. But you don't know. I mean, you just don't know that he has it. But most of his fans do because it was part of his character on Breaking Bad. It's not part of his character in this. So he can do either, which is really wonderful. And I'm very impressed with how far the world has come in a short period of time. And I'm hoping to see more and more of that. I was reading something about somebody else who's doing, I think, a TV show who has some form of disability. And I just think that's a wonderful thing because why not?
Yeah.
We're all part of the human race.
Yeah, and where I was coming from, Lee, is once upon a time, if you did a film such as Carol of the Bells, you would cast an actor who didn't have Down, and their challenge would be to assume that condition. It is more realistic and more authentic to have an actor such as Andrea play that role because, again, it makes it more authentic. It brings it home.
Absolutely, and she's fantastic, and she lives alone. She has an apartment near the beach. I said, "You got an apartment near the beach? I don't have an apartment." But she's great, and she lives a very full life. I've never seen anybody operate a cell phone at light speed like she does, and it was very exciting to work with her. And she's funny. She's very, very witty. So it was quite an eye-opener to work with her. I had no idea. I've done a lot of charity work, and one of the charities I worked with quite a lot a while ago was Special Olympics and then also Big Brothers. And so I was around people with disabilities, but not on a daily, 12-hour-a-day situation. And it's very different doing that. And so I am grateful. I am grateful to Joey and grateful for the opportunity.
Carol of the Bells opens the Bentonville Film Festival May 7th to May 11, 2019. For more information, BentonvilleFilmFestival.com. Lee Purcell, our guest, is one of the stars of Carol of the Bells. You can follow Lee on Twitter and on Instagram, as well as her website, leepurcell.com. What do you look for, Lee, when you consider a part, whether it's for Carol of the Bells or any other project you consider doing for stage, film, or television?
Well, that's a very broad question.
Okay, let's break it down. What was it about your character in this film that made you want to do it?
I had never played a character like that. I thought that was very exciting. And then, of course, as we've been discussing, the subject matter and the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I was sent the script, and simultaneously I was sent a link to Inclusion Film's website. I read the script, and it was just such a wonderful role. It's not a role that I have often played. Usually I play something more, I don't know, more out there, more dramatic,
mm-hmm.
or more comedic. And this was more calm, more authoritative, more of a, well, she's a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that, because the only caregivers I've played has been Nurse Ratched. On stage, and that's not much of a caregiver.
Yeah.
And then in a recent pilot, and also not much of a caregiver. So this was a kind but firm and strict woman, and I found that to be interesting. Usually I look for something that is something I haven't done before.
Yeah.
I really don't like to repeat myself.
And that's what helps you grow as a performer, because even though you've been a performer virtually all of your life, if you take your craft seriously, you always want to get better from day to day, from year to year.
Yes, you do. And, acting is really hard work, and people who don't act don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people who don't do it do know that. So if you do something different than you've done before, it's much harder, but it's much more fun. And I believe that life is for having fun.
Yes.
It's for doing good. It's for having fun. It's for helping others, and making a mark of some sort.
We were talking about this before we started recording, Lee. I understand that you pretty much knew what you wanted to do with your life from the time you were 3 years old. Where do you think that came from?
I don't know if I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I did know it would be in the arts. When I was 3, I was a child model for Neiman Marcus. Mm-hmm. We were living in Dallas. We moved a lot the early part of my life, and then settled down later. I think I was chosen because I was able to take direction. And, if they say walk over there, I could walk over there. If they said walk this way with your arm, I could do it. And then performing, I didn't go on television until I was 5, so I waited a while. I was lazy, but I think I started dance lessons at 3, and then I did my first play at 7, and then I was with a traveling troupe by the time I was 13. So I don't know. I think people come to their careers, whatever they are, in so many varied ways. And I think that some people just know, it's not that you know it, it's just that you do it. My mother always said that I was up on my toes before I could walk. So I was already preparing for point work, for wearing point shoes, dancing,
mm-hmm.
Ballet.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an instinct that people have. Maybe it comes from another lifetime. I don't know. Maybe it comes from it's just in you, I think. But some people, don't come to be an actor until they're 40. They did other things. I know somebody who was an attorney, became an actor. I know somebody who's a doctor,
mm-hmm.
became an actor. So people come to their lives in such rich and interesting ways. Everybody I have ever met has a story. And I love it. I love talking to people and hearing what their stories are and how they did come to where they are in life. Mine just happens to be mine. And I just jumped into it feet first, and there you go.
I understand that one of the pivotal characters in your personal story, Lee, is your maternal grandmother.
Yeah, how'd you know that?
I did as much Lee Purcell homework as I could before you called.
Well, The next time you mention my social media, don't forget to mention my Facebook fan page, because that's important.
Okay.
For people to follow.
Facebook.com/Lee Purcell fan page.
So both my grandmothers were very instrumental in my life, and my father's mother and my mother's mother. But my mother's mother was such a modern woman, and that's a term that people don't use anymore, but they used it back then. And she was a poet. She, not by profession, she was a nurse by profession. She had a really interesting and a really tough life. And my grandfather died when he was 46, and she had a real hard time. But instead of whining about it, she just got on with it, and she decided to go to nursing school, and she did at 40-something, and graduated top of her class, and became a very sought-after nurse, and was able to create the kind of life that she wanted. She was an original kind of bi-coastal person, and being a nurse, she could work anywhere. So she, her brothers and her mother lived in California, and then her daughter, my mother, by that time was living in Arkansas, and so she would split her time. She'd be 2 years California, 2 years Arkansas. And she was just a very interesting person who could basically do anything, was very much ahead of her time, and always was very creative. She didn't just write poetry, but everything in the house was made by her. You know, she would take our old clothes and she would tear them into strips and dye them and make rag rugs. She did all of her own painting and floor refinishing and wallpapering and sewing. All of her clothes were made by her. She was just a real Renaissance woman. So that, to me, she was to me my biggest inspiration, and she was my greatest cheerleader, because she just said, just do whatever you want to do as long as you do it full on. And I always took that to heart. And she was very supportive of the type of career I wanted, because there was careers I did not want. I really didn't want to be on a series for a long, long time. I did end up on 2 series, but I really didn't. It wasn't my goal. I wanted just to act, and I wanted to do as many varied roles as I could. And she was very supportive of that. Even if I didn't always have a lot of money, she was very supportive of me. And she's just, no, you have to go where your heart goes.
Yeah, and just one small example of that is we mentioned in our open, your first major film role was Adam at 6 a.m., produced by Steve McQueen and co-starring Michael Douglas. Now, this was released in 1970. Today, it's not uncommon for a young actor, to make a major film and then maybe pursue something for cable television or even network television, because there's a lot of going back and forth today. That wasn't the case back then. You either did films or you did television. You didn't cross paths. But every now and then there are exceptions, such as yourself, who didn't care about that. They just looked for the best role regardless of what the medium was.
That's true. Although the first part of my career was definitely film. And then, because at that time, it was pretty much forbidden if you did both. You either were a TV star or you were a film star. You didn't do both. I just did both. And I think it served me extremely well. And I'm happy that I did it that way. And I guess I was ahead of my time, because there were very few people doing that at that time. I mean, Goldie Hawn did it. I can't think of anybody else. Well, I'm sure that there were.
Well, James Garner, who we talked about very briefly before we started recording, he did that.
He did that, but I was thinking of women, because women had it much tougher.
Oh, I got one. Suzanne Pleshette. She went back and forth between film and television.
Yes, and I knew Suzanne.
Yeah.
She was a tremendous person, great actress.
Yeah.
A bit ahead of me, but yeah, she did do that. Suzanne, Goldie, I can't think of who else. But I know there was a handful, but it was very rare. And I remember agents saying to me, "Oh no, you can't do both. If you start doing a lot of TV, then you'll never get another film." And that didn't work. It didn't work that way for me. I just kept getting films, and I kept doing TV. And even though I didn't want to do a series, I did turn down a bunch of series. But because I didn't want to get stuck.
Right.
And I was stuck in a role, and I didn't want to be stuck in a role. And I'm sure I would be far more famous now and far wealthier, but it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't the career that I wanted for myself. And I think it's worked for me because I have longevity.
Yes.
And I'm really happy about that. And I may not be as well branded as somebody else, but I do have longevity, and I'm able to keep working. I'm still viable. So, hey, what more do you want?
And you did a couple of series, but you did them on your terms.
Yes, and it was much, much later. It was years and years later. And in that span of time, I'd moved to England. I had, studied there and taught there and directed there, and then a lot of things I wanted to do, I got to do. And I'm still doing them. Knock on wood. Where's some wood? There you go.
There you go. Well, I'm knocking on my desk. My desk is made of wood as well, so we got you covered both ways, Lee. Lee Purcell is on the line with us. Lee's latest film, Carol of the Bells, is scheduled to open the Bentonville Film Festival on Tuesday, May 7th. We'll take a quick time out, then we'll talk some more with Lee when we come back on TV Confidential. Got a product or service that you want our listeners to know about? Become an advertiser or underwriter of TV Confidential and let our brand help promote your brand. For more information, go to televisionconfidential.com/advertise or visit the TV Confidential page at advertisecast.com.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life, but it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
The Disneyana Fan Club Collectible Show and Sale is the place to go to find the very best Disney collectibles and products, old and new, for purchase. This year's Disneyana Fan Club Collectible Show and Sale takes place Sunday, May 5th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Delta by Marriott Hotel, located at the corner of Chapman and Harbor, south of Disneyland and Garden Grove, California. Everything Disney will be there that day, including collectibles of all ages, artwork, figurines, stamps, postcards, CDs, and albums. Special guests scheduled to appear that day will include Will Ryan and TV Confidential's Greg Ehrbar. There will also be a silent auction, plus door prizes, raffles, and a whole lot more. For tickets and more information, go to DisneyanaFanClub.org. You can listen to this show all over again as a podcast on TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and other podcast platforms. Best of all, it's free. To find out how to subscribe to the TV Confidential podcast, go to the homepage at televisionconfidential.com and click subscribe now. Alexa users, you can now listen to TV Confidential on your smart speaker just by saying, Alexa, play TV Confidential. Enabling the TV Confidential Alexa skill is easy. To find out how to do it, go to televisionconfidential.com/Alexa.
Hi, this is Richard Pryor Jr., and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson, along with our guest actress, writer, director, and producer, Lee Purcell. Lee's latest film, Carol of the Bells, opens the Bentonville Film Festival May 7th to May 11th, 2019. For more information, bentonvillefilmfestival.com. You can follow Lee on Twitter and on Instagram and facebook.com/Lee Purcell fan page. Before we leave the subject of Adam at 6 a.m., you had a very special relationship with Steve McQueen. He took interest in your career. He didn't have to, but he saw something in you. And my understanding is that made all the difference in your performance. Tell our listeners what it was like to have worked with Steve McQueen in that way.
Well, let's also make it very clear that this is Steve McQueen, the movie star.
Yeah.
This is not.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Current director.
No. Yeah.
Both are fantastic.
Yes.
Steve, it's very emotional for me because he was he was my mentor.
Mm-hmm.
He was my official mentor, but he was like a father, and we had a lot in common in our childhoods. Even though he grew up a lot in foster care, had a rough time of it, but emotionally we had a similar experiences in childhood with loss and moving around and hard times. And on the appearancy of it, it would seem as if I had an easy time of it, but it was a challenge. It was a challenge, put it that way. And we both rode motorcycles. We both liked fast cars. And he often said that he saw a kindred spirit in me, and he liked my talent. So he chose me, personally chose me, to play the role. It's a very long time ago now, but it's something that I will never forget because it did kickstart my career and my life.
Yeah.
And he taught me so much. I mean, he taught me about finance, and he taught me about longevity, and he taught me about exercise. And I would go to his office and we'd work out because he thought I was too skinny because I was a model and wanted me to gain some weight for this role, which I did, but he didn't want me to be not toned. And so he taught me these exercises, and I said, where are you getting these exercises? And he said, we didn't call them personal trainers then. He said, it's from the guy who's helping me keep in shape. And he's a great Chinese martial arts person. And only about 5 years ago, when I was interviewed for a book on Steve, I have a chapter in the book, was I told that person was Bruce Lee.
Wow.
Which I never knew because Steve never mentioned his name.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, I guess I was trained by Bruce Lee, like 2 people removed, you know. So it was just, we used to drive around in his Porsche, and he'd go really fast, and then he kept looking over at me to see if I'd get scared, and I was scared to death, and I would try not to show that I was scared to death because I knew if I had shown I was scared to death, it would be not good for me because he liked the fact that I was a real adrenaline junkie like he was. And we really had a father-daughter relationship, and it was great.
Yeah, he had that sort of inner independent spirit, inner drive that formed who you were, who you are as a person, and it's from that inner drive that you draw on in your performance, not only in that film, but in every project that you do.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Of course, he had the inner drive of all inner drives. He was just a force of nature, unstoppable until, a disease killed him. But and he died, pretty young.
I know. I think he was either in his 4s or like early 5s.
He was 50.
Yeah.
Which is hard to imagine that now he would be, he's been gone about 30-something years.
Yeah.
He was of my parents' generation, which was great, actually, because I didn't have any, fan crush on him.
Yeah.
He was like, he's like my stepfather's age. So that was good because I had no fear of him. I think if I had been closer in age, I may have been too starstruck to even breathe. But I was so far away from him in age that wasn't the case.
And plus, when the time came to read for the part initially, you weren't all caught up in, oh my God, this is for Steve McQueen. You didn't have to deal with any of that, or you weren't fazed by any of that, which, as you said, was good, because that way you could just focus on your performance, what you needed to do for that reading, and then from there.
Exactly. That is so true. It's like when I worked with Kirk Douglas, course, I'd already worked with Michael Douglas in Adam at 6 a.m., but years later, I ended up working with Kirk. And again, Kirk was of my parents' generation. And they were so starstruck that and I never have visitors on the set. I don't like that. That's like, somebody, a family member coming into, their surgeon's father's office and visiting, the surgery room. It's like, no, don't come near me. But because I was working with Kirk Douglas, my parents decided to surprise me on the set, my mother and my stepfather, because they could not resist the fact that I was working with Kirk Douglas. It was irresistible. They were such huge fans of Kirk Douglas. I mean, Spartacus, my gosh, so they just simply arrived on the set in another state, really far away from where they lived, because they wanted to meet Kirk Douglas. And see, I didn't have that because, again, he was of my parents' generation. Now, Michael was of my generation, but we were kids, and that was different. And so I didn't have that starstruck thing with Kirk, nor did I have it with Charlie Bronson or any of the other legendary names that I had. I had it a little bit with Orson Welles, a little bit with him. But on that film, which was this small little witch film, there were a whole bunch of us young kids, and we were all just trying to stay alive, basically. And here came Orson Welles. Wow. That was like, just wow. Yeah. I mean, what can you say? We were just a bunch of kids. We weren't being paid hardly anything. Yeah. We weren't being treated well. We were being given sack lunches. I'm serious. Sack lunches, and Orson had a chef. So we got the sack lunches so they could pay for Orson's chef, who would cook for Orson on the set and show him a selection of wines. And we were eating our stale apples and soggy tuna fish sandwiches. But it was Orson Welles. I mean, there's not a lot of people who can say they worked with Orson Welles at 19, but I did. Yeah,
I understand. He was a magnetic personality in every sense of the word.
Every sense. He was, I mean, definitely this film was a step down for him. But he was professional, he was charismatic, and I played his protege, so I had the most screen time and the most dialogue with him. And that voice, oh my God, that voice was perfection. So, I worked with a lot of really wonderful people.
Lee Purcell is on the line with us. Lee recently completed production of the upcoming feature film, Carol of the Bells. Carol of the Bells opens the Bentonville Film Festival May 7th to May 11th, 2019. For more information, bentonvillefilmfestival.com. You can follow Lee on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook.com/Lee Purcell fan page. Lee has worked with many wonderful people throughout her career, one of which was Bill Bixby. David, listening to us in Plant City, Florida. David has a question for you, Lee. Ed, please ask Ms. Purcell what memories she has of appearing in the first Incredible Hulk reunion TV movie, The Incredible Hulk Returns. What was her experience like working with Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno, and Eric Allen Kramer? In case you don't remember, Kramer was the actor who played Thor in that movie. What memories do you have of that experience in working with Bill Bixby, Lee?
Well, first of all, Lou and I are still friends, and Lou and his wife and I just saw them recently. He's wonderful, so is his wife. Working with Bill was really a sweet, sweet experience. It was a very emotional experience, actually. I don't know how long. He'd had a lot of losses in his life, and his son had died. I think he was 12, and his ex-wife had unfortunately not been able to live with that, so she had committed suicide, and so it was a very emotional. It was a very emotional film. Certainly not looking at the film, you wouldn't know any of that, but the backstory back of it was that way. And he and I got along just like gangbusters. he was very involved in the film. He directed it. Didn't he direct it? I think he directed it.
I believe he did, yeah.
If he didn't, he sure did.
Yeah.
But he was very involved, and because these were characters that were sacred to him. He had done that long-running series, and as David said, it was the first of the reunion films, and I played his girlfriend, and I don't remember the story very well. Maybe I died. I don't remember. But I do remember the personal aspects of it, and I remember Bill had he had a thing for my legs. He loved my legs, and he wanted me to wear short skirts all the time. And when I wore slacks, as I had to in one scene, he didn't like that, but he understood that it was a lot of stunts or something in that particular scene. So I had to wear slacks. But he was like, no, you, because I had been a dancer, and he said, no, we have to show your dancer's calves. And it wasn't like a lascivious thing or anything. It was just an aesthetic. He had this aesthetic. And that's what he wanted to look at, was dancer's calves and pretty red hair. And, I mean, he was a real man, you know, for sure.
Yeah.
And he, one day he said to me when we first started working, he knew I had a son. You know, tell me about your son. I told him. I did not know at that time that he had a son who had passed. And so I told him about my son, and I showed him some photos, and he said, oh, do you want to see a photo of my son? And I said, oh, yeah. And he showed me a photo of this beautiful, beautiful blonde boy. And he said, yeah, he was 12 when he died. You know, all the air went out of the room.
Yeah.
But he was very accepting of it, not happy. He was very sad, but he was very accepting. He had lived with that fact for a while.
Yeah.
He just, you know, he wasn't going to stop showing pictures of his son.
No.
And I loved that. I just loved it, that he was proud of his son, even though his son was no longer there. He was very proud of his son, and I thought that was wonderful.
And it just shows the level of his professionalism, Lee, in that, you know, regardless of what personal tragedy he was dealing with or living with at the time, when it came to the work, when the red light goes on, he becomes laser focused like any professional does, and you do the best you can to bring the script to life in the best way possible in the time that you have to do it in.
Absolutely, and he was a consummate professional, but a really, really decent human being.
Before we started recording, we chatted a little bit about one of your early roles in television. You did an episode of Rockford Files with James Garner. What memories do you have of working with James Garner?
Well, he was awfully good looking. Even though he was, of course, an older man. But he was a very handsome, and he was one of the funniest people I think I've ever worked with. And one day he said to me, do you want to see me cross my eyes one at a time? And I said, no, you know, people can't do that. Come on, Jim, nobody can. And he said, no, really, I can do it. I said, all right. So he did it. He crossed his eyes one at a time. And he said, I said, but that's just not physically possible. And he said, but you just saw, you know, and we had this whole conversation about it. And he said, okay, I'll teach you to do it. And so he did. And so anytime I need like a little cocktail party trick, I just cross my eyes one at a time, like Jim Garner taught me.
Yeah, I had a couple opportunities to talk to him from my book, and I had a chance to talk to a lot of people, such as you, Lee, who worked with him. And he would do things like that all the time to put actors at ease and to put the crew people at ease.
Well, yeah, but he was a prankster.
Yes.
He was a total prankster. And I wish I could have worked with him more and later, when I could have really talked to him, you know, because I was just too young. But I can still cross my eyes one at a time. You can still cross your eyes one at a time. And going back to just the time you worked together, yes, you were a young actress. He was older than you. But if you were to go back and watch the film or watch that episode, the age difference, that's not a factor because, you know, you hold your own, you know, with James Garner. I'm glad to hear that. I don't know that I've ever seen it. Or I may have seen it once when it came out, because I don't like watching my own work. I never watch my own work unless I'm forced into it. And sometimes you just are. You know, you have to go to a screening and you can't just close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'd like to, most of the time. But good, I'm glad to hear that. Because I did work with a lot of older people. And, of course, now I'm the older people. And I'm pretty thrilled about that, actually.
I understand you recently completed a pilot.
Yeah. And
you have a couple of other film projects in the works. What can you tell our listeners about your pilot and your upcoming films?
Well, the pilot is called Sick, and I referenced it much earlier in our conversation. I play a nurse in a psychiatric hospital, and she's not quite Nurse Ratched.
Okay.
She's darn close.
Okay.
And so that's that. And I don't know what's going to happen with that pilot. You never know. You just do it, and then you move on. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I'm a writer. I'm always writing. Mm-hmm. So I'm writing something right now for several actors that I know, including myself. So that's very exciting. Mm-hmm. And I'm very, very active in my union. I'm on the board of SAG-AFTRA and many committees, and I really like that. I'm an elected official, Ed, and it's very rewarding, and it's a lot of hard work. And then I'm also very active in the Motion Picture Academy, where I've been for many years. So there's a lot going on other than just the acting. So I'm pretty busy. I mean, I actually crazy busy.
She's crazy busy, but we're very glad that she took some time out of her very busy day to talk to us. Lee Purcell can be seen in Carol of the Bells. Carol of the Bells is scheduled to open the Bentonville Film Festival, which runs May 7th through May 11th. For more information, BentonvilleFilmFestival.com. It will also be released later in the year towards the holidays. In the meantime, you can keep up with Lee Purcell on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter, as well as her website, leepurcell.com. Lee Purcell, thank you so much for joining us. I hope we'll have a chance to talk again on TV Confidential.
It was my great pleasure, Ed.
Kat Kramer will join us when we come back on TV Confidential. Alexa users, you can now listen to TV Confidential on your smart speaker just by saying, Alexa, play TV Confidential. Enabling the TV Confidential Alexa skill is easy. To find out how to do it, go to televisionconfidential.com/Alexa. Ed Robertson, along with her friend Donna Allen Figueroa, who I understand has a new book out.
Yes, it's entitled Fall Again Beginnings. It's the first part of a 4-part contemporary romantic series set against the background of working actors.
Something that you know a thing or two
well,
about.
You write what you know, and I have been working in the business for several years.
It is not necessarily autobiographical, but it's based on...
Sure, many of the experiences that the actors in my book have, many have happened to me, many have happened to friends of mine. It's not, if you're looking for Valley of the Dolls, it's not, it's grounded in reality.
It is grounded in reality, and it's the first in a series.
Yes.
Called the Fall Again series.
Fall Again.
Which is available as a paperback as well as an ebook and in Kindle at fallagainseries.com. Ed Robertson, along with Benny Biffle and Sammy Schuster, the stars of The Misadventures of Biffle and Schuster.
Hey, Benny.
Yeah, Sammy?
Did you know that there's a new DVD out called The Misadventures of Biffle and Schuster?
You're kidding. I thought it was married. I thought it was The Mrs. Adventures of Biffle and Schuster.
No, it's single. It's single. It's called The Misadventures of Biffle and Schuster. It's on Kino Lorber.
Oh, that's a big company.
It is. They only release good stuff. In fact, this came out the same week as the Ten Commandments, the Paramount one that was in color, came out.
You're kidding.
So you know they deal in quality.
Yeah.
Of course, this one's mostly in black and white, but there is some color in there, as I recall.
Right. But the movies are colorful in themselves.
They certainly are. Mm-hmm. And we work with some wonderful people in there.
That's right. And Joe Dante visited us on the set, the great director Joe Dante. What did he say about this collection of shorts?
He said something along the lines of, and this is merely a quote, "Forehead-slapping funny. What impresses is the dogged authenticity to the era, which makes it all the more hilarious, says I, Joe Dante."
Joe Dante. How about that?
Yes. And he's a famous writer.
Yes, he is. Well, wrote about that Inferno thing.
He certainly did, yeah.
Terrific, yeah.
We're
Biffle and Schuster, as you can see. No one else can make that statement louder than we.
They say we're soporific, and
it's
we likely
probably
agree
we.
because
We're Biffle and Schuster. Oh, we're Biffle and Schuster. No, we're Biffle and Schuster.
B-I-F-F-Biffle, Biffle. S-H-W-S to Schuster.
Biffle and Schuster. Need we say more?
Available wherever DVDs are sold through our friends at Kino Lorber. TV Confidential is available online for listening on demand as a podcast through iTunes, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere else where you could download podcasts. You can also listen to recent episodes of TV Confidential on demand for free on the Listen Now page at televisionconfidential.com.